Hey guys, welcome back to This Old House. On this episode, we're going to show you how to recaulk an old clawfoot antique bathtub. Nah, just kidding. We're going to put this roof rack on this Tundra. Let's get started. When you open up everything and get it all unwrapped and you lay it out, this is everything that you're going to have. You're going to have a front fairing. Whether or not you have the LED light bar brackets or not is going to determine whether or not you selected the option for a light bar or not. This one is without. You're going to have a left and a right side panel, a rear fairing, steel mounts, some edge trim, 2 installation hardware kits. The first one is going to have rib nuts and a drill bit. The other one has all the hardware in it. And then from there, you're going to have all your crossbars. Now that we have it all out, let's put it together. So I went ahead and took all my hardware and I put all the little washers onto them. And I put the longer bolts off to the side because these are going to be used for mounting into the roof as well as the larger washers. So I set those off to the side, put my washers on all of these button head bolts so that they're ready to go. Now I have a crossbar and a side rail laid out and I'm going to start bolting them together. On the crossbars, you're going to notice that we have these little channels here. That's so that you can drop a clip nut in to the rail without having to take the whole rail apart. So I'm going to go ahead and put all those onto the passenger side just so it's uniform. If you want them on the driver's side, you can put them on the driver's side. Anyways, just going to grab these bolts, take your rails, and thread them together. Be very careful here. You don't want to cross thread these things. They should thread pretty easy. If they're going to thread hard, you should move your bolt around and try to get it right. So we're going to use a 5/32 Allen, and you're just going to go ahead and snug these up. You don't want to go crazy just yet. You just want to get them to where the rail and the crossbar are held together. Now I'm going to go all the way down and put all the rest of the crossbars in. Then I'm going to flip over to the other side and put the side rail on the other side. So now we have the rack mostly assembled. We need to put the front fairing and the rear fairing on. And we also are going to put on this edge trim. The one thing we were talking about earlier is whether or not you choose to have this with a 40-inch light bar cut out or not. As you can see here, I do not have the light bar cut out, so I don't have to worry about the light bar mount. If you did go with the 40-inch light bar cutout, you can check out our installation PDF and it will actually show you how to install the mounts and that fairing. The fairing install is the same. The only difference is the LED light bar mounts themselves. So right now I'm going to go ahead and put this edge trim on the fairing. So I unrolled the roll that comes with it. You're going to trim it down. So we're just going to go ahead and start at this point over here. And I'm going to go ahead and just get an idea of where we're going to cut it off. And then go ahead and trim this off. You're going to save this because we're going to use it on the rear fairing. Now I'm just going to go ahead and push this on. So as I put this on, I'm going to tell you guys, our racks are pretty quiet. You don't really need this. Other companies call it as like a noise reducer. I'm not sure what they're doing to make their racks noisy. Ours don't really need this. The benefit to having this on here is it won't mess up your paint. So if the fairing does flex in any way and it gets down on the truck, it doesn't scratch your paint. That's kind of the idea behind it. We include it. Other people make you pay for it. It's going to be right in the kit, so you might as well put it on. And as you can see, I kind of just got it started, and then you're going to go through here and you're just going to kind of push and it's going to kind of click down like that. All right, so now we're on the rear fairing and you're going to notice that there's this little cutout right here. It's actually for the third brake light on your truck. So when it sits on the rack, the third brake light's right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this in half and we're going to install a piece here and here. Same reason. That way if this thing ever moves, it doesn't shake and scratch your paint. So you can go ahead and measure this, or you can just kind of eyeball it and cut that in half. And then go ahead and install this guy right here. Next up, we're going to put these fairings on. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it on the inside of the rack like that. You're going to use these bolts, stick them through. Nuts are going to go on the back side. Now when you install this thing, what you're going to want to do is get it started, and then when you put your nuts on, we're going to push the fairing all the way up because it has some adjustability so that it's the furthest away from the truck. So when we set the rack up onto the truck, when we go to install it, it's not making contact with the roof. Then we'll adjust the fairing down from there. 5/32 Allen, go ahead and just pull it all the way up so it's all the way at the top of its slots, and go ahead and just snug them up. So the edge trim has like a metal backer, as you can see right here, and when you cut it, you're actually going to cut through that backer. And if you have a piece that sticks out like this, what you can do is actually grab it like this and pull it out of the trim like that and get rid of that. Sometimes the way you cut it, you're going to cut into one of those things, then you don't have that metal hanging out like that. Same thing in the back. Go ahead and get this fairing installed. Make sure that this flange is on the top and this cutout is on the bottom. If you put it on the other way, it will be on upside down. Everyone will laugh at you. It'll be a real sad day. It probably wouldn't come into contact with the light. It might. You're going to notice that we have these flanges on the front and the rear fairing, and the reason we have those on there is so that when you go to load something onto your rack, say you want to throw a 2x4 up here or something, it's not going to catch on the fairing, it's not going to bend the fairing. It also is going to give some rigidity to the fairing itself. So it's a nice feature. One thing you'll see is our racks, we actually have rear fairings on the back. A lot of rack companies do not even put a rear fairing on it, so it kind of looks incomplete, kind of lame-o. So we decided to do something kind of cool. So we have the whole rack together, fairings on it. Now we're going to go ahead and bolt the mounts on it. What you're going to see is that we actually have cut into the bottom here. It actually stands for Tundra, so TU, 2 and 3, second and third generation, and rear. So this is our rear mount. This one says F, so that's a front, and as well as there's an arrow. So that one has to go on that side, and the other one is the opposite, it has to go on this side. So the writing or the letters are going to go down onto the roof of the truck. So we're going to go ahead and use these bolts that we've been using here and the nuts, and go ahead and loosely install these. You're going to notice that they're slotted here, so we have some adjustability up and down. And we also, when we go to set this on the rack, on the truck, when we go to set this on the truck, we're going to want to have some movement so that we can kind of finagle these into the channel. So arrow facing forward, F is in front. Go ahead and put that on. R for rear, no arrows on this one, so this can be that side or this side. Same thing. Bolt it on right down here. So we're going to go ahead and prep the rail. We're going to pull this trim out of here on both sides, and then we're going to set the rack up here, mark all of our holes, take the rack off, drill the holes, final install on the rack. So anyways, to get this out, you're just going to come back here, and you can use a screwdriver to pop this out. It's basically the trim piece is underneath this piece. We're going to leave this piece on, or you can just kind of grab this corner right here and kind of walk it back, pull it out like that. So you can see this is the channel that goes underneath. Now you just work your way forward on the truck. When you get to about right here, there's going to be some double-sided tape, and you just kind of peel it up like that, and it'll tear that out. And then when you get up here, you just kind of pop it back. This little piece clips into this little part right there. Take these, we're going to throw them off to the side. We're going to save them because we're going to trim them and put them back on. So go ahead and do that on both sides. All right, so we have the rack on the truck, and what we're going to do is we're going to position this rack by measuring from the back of this mount to the piece of that edge trim that we left on the cab. And you're going to notice right there, I'm at 2 inches. That's where you want to be, 2 inches. This is the Crew Max. All right, so now we're on a double cab truck. I'm going to show you where to put this rear mount. We're actually not going to measure at all. We're just going to butt this mount all the way against this trim after we've removed the main trim piece. So again, we're going to be leaving this rear trim piece in place, butting our rear mount up against it. That will set your locations for your rack so that you can mark all the holes and drill them on the double cab. So 2 inches on the Crew Max from the back of this edge trim to that bracket. Now we're going to mark the holes and drill them. Make sure that you're square, so make sure that you check both sides before you go ahead and mark everything. Okay, so now we have the rack off, it's time to start drilling. I know this is the part that no one really enjoys. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can use the nut certs that we provide, or you can actually take your headliner out and bolt it. I recommend doing the nut certs. So what I have going on here is I have a pilot bit, which is 1/8 inch. or smaller, just something to get it started, you're gonna have to provide that. And then from there, we have a drill bit that will fit. It's with the hardware kit that has the nutserts in it. And we also include a couple extra nutserts, so if you wanna practice or if you mess one up, you can start over. So this is the drill bit you're gonna need, that is included. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a center punch. You can see the holes that we marked with our Sharpie. We're gonna go ahead and center punch them so that our drill doesn't wander. Go ahead and get our pilot.
Hey everyone, Daryl here. I want to interject this video with a quick tech tip. You're about to drill into your roof and we want to make sure that you're only drilling as far as necessary, whatever this video shows. Usually it's just through the first couple layers of pinch weld or sheet metal or whatever that is. So to help you with that, I'm going to show you a little tool. This is a drill stop. It's made out of steel. It's a steel ring with a little set screw. What you do is you drop it on the table. What you do is you take this and you slide it over the drill bit and you set the set screw on a flat after you pick the depth. So let's say we're going to do a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch or whatever this video says. That's going to allow the drill bit to stop once it pushes through the roof. So you don't have to be so careful about not punching through the roof with the drill bit. So you tighten this down like that, and then that will set the depth of drilling on that. So you might want to put some masking tape on your roof so when this pushes through, the collar spins on masking tape and not on your roof. So we try to pick areas on the roof that are least intrusive as possible, but there are still side curtain airbags, wiring, your headliner, untold amounts of things depending on how deep you drill. So this little collar is a little cheap insurance policy that helps keep you from drilling too deep through the roof. Back to the video.
So we just want to drill as deep as necessary. So really you're only going to be drilling in about a 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pilot hole this. Just take your time. Just be careful when it goes. We don't want to go too deep, guys. So make sure you take your time and be very patient. Let the drill bit work. Don't work the drill bit. All right, now it's time, using the drill bit provided, let's get this ready for our rib nuts. All right, same thing, we're gonna go ahead and take our time. All right, so before we go ahead and put RTV on this, we're gonna make sure that we drilled all the way through. So you're just gonna go ahead and test fit the rib nut in there. You're gonna get this little rib nut installation tool. And what it's gonna do is, it's got a washer, a bolt, a star washer to hold the rib nut and then the rib nut itself. So what's gonna happen is, when you put this in the hole, you use a wrench to hold it, like so. And then you just start tightening it down and it's gonna crush that nutsert into the roof. Before we do that, I want to correct myself because people on YouTube, the last time I said roof, they said it was a roof. So before we put this nutsert in the roof, we're going to go ahead and put RTV on it. So what you're going to do here is you're going to want to put RTV around the rib nut like so before we stick it into the hole. Okay. Now what we do, put it down in the hole, just kind of give it a twist. Make sure it has RTV all around it. So it's a 5/8 wrench and then a 10mm ratchet. And we're gonna go ahead and just start cranking it down, righty-tighty. And what we're gonna do is it's going to crush it into the roof. Roof. Careful guy. Okay, you're gonna start to feel it get really tight. That's when you know that it's crushed as far as it's gonna crush. We can go ahead and take this off, loosen this bolt, and unscrew this. And we can check it to make sure it's good before we move on to the next one. Okay, so you're looking to make sure that the nut is crushed evenly, so it wants to pull straight up, and you can see the threads, everything is pulled straight up, and then also that it's seated well. There you go. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the RTV around it like that, and move on to the next one. Now we only have 7 more to go. All right, so now we have the rib nuts installed. We're gonna go ahead and put RTV. What you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna start in the hole and actually fill the hole, and then go around it like that. Same thing on this one, around like that. And then from there, you're just gonna kind of go around where this mount is going to be to kind of help hold it to the roof. Do that on all locations. So we have RTV on all the locations. Now we're gonna go ahead and set the rack up here. You don't wanna smear the rack around, you wanna set it down into the locations, and then we'll bolt it down. All right, so now we have the rack in its place. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna tap off these holes the rest of the way with our TV. So we're just filling the bracket up to the top of the bolt hole. Then we're gonna take our bolt, push it through the RTV, and get it started. Now you don't wanna cross thread this bolt, so make sure you're really careful on how this goes in. It should go nice and easy like this. If it's giving you any resistance, don't keep going, because if you cross thread one of these into a rib nut at this point in the game, you are gonna be a very unhappy or a very sad panda. Okay. I didn't tighten it all that much, I just kind of snugged it up. I'm gonna make sure I can get all these started before I finally tighten it down. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and snug these up good. You can see the RTV is gonna kind of spill out around the mount. Okay, and you don't wanna over torque these. Just get them good and tight, like that. Okay, on to the next one. So now we're gonna trim the trim that goes in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure I have the right side. You're gonna notice it kind of has a flare that goes towards the outside of the truck, so you know your left or your right. You're gonna measure from the front of the windshield to your mount, to the back of your mount right there, and then you're gonna go ahead and mark it and cut it. With the rack bolted to the roof, you have your trim back in your channel. What we need to do now is tighten the bolts that actually mount the mounts to the truck. So as you can see, the rack is still loose. So what we're gonna wanna do, these holes are slotted. We're gonna wanna make sure we have an even reveal down the side here, and then we're just gonna kind of shift the rack and tighten those up and work your way all the way around the truck, and then we're onto the fairing. Now that everything's tightened down, what we're gonna wanna do is we're actually wanna adjust the fairing. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna loosen these up, and you're gonna shove this thing all the way down so that the edge trim is actually contacting the roof. You're gonna do that in the front, and you're also gonna do it in the back fairing. So push it all the way down and tighten it up. One of the questions we get asked a lot is, will my sunroof still function with your rack? Now, as you can see right here, I actually have one bar that kind of goes right down the middle of the sunroof. Now, when you look up, you're obviously gonna see that. The thing is when this sunroof slides, it actually slides inside the roof, so that sliding mechanism doesn't matter to these rails. The one thing is if you vent it and it actually tips up like that, it can come into contact with this bar or this bar, depending on how you have it adjusted. As you can see right now, I have this bar back of the sunroof, which is where you'd want it, and then you would want to put this bar as far forward as you can. And then at that point, the tilt function works like normal. But like anything, just use your brain when you're doing stuff, when you're loading it. Load responsibly is a tagline Cameron came up with. Enjoy your rack.